This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, Vivian, maybe go on mute. If people could go on mute until you have something to say, that will help us without getting background. Okay, so the last couple of times when we had our class, one was Yechezkel, one was Yirmiyahu, and I came away feeling a little bit unfulfilled. And nothing, there's no judgment. It's not like anybody here did anything wrong or right, but I found it distant from me. Like, we're learning the Navi and we're learning the connection to the Torah portion, and we found it, and people had good things to say, but I still was left feeling almost a little bored. And I talked about this stuff, Stephen, and we came up with a slightly different plan when we were trying to probe what was it. For me, it was that the Chachamim, our sages, chose very particularly each Haftarah portion, but it wasn't only to connect it to the Torah. I believe it also has a message for the ages. And I think that was where I got a little stuck. I was even considering changing the topic and going to something else, but I don't like to give up so easily. And I still have this dream of learning the Haftarah, at least some of them. So what we came up with a plan. Here was my plan. Today, it's not quite as relevant, but we could do it today as well, because today it is so rich and it's a story and there's so much to learn that I don't know that we'll even get to it. But perhaps when it's more two-dimensional and less three-dimensional, perhaps instead of only focusing on the connection to the parasha, I would like to offer other thoughtful and insightful questions for us to talk about, as well as where does it connect in our lives? Where is the intersectionality? Where can we find a message that feels relevant to us? And here's where I need your partnership. Because first of all, I may not find something so relevant, and you may, because often this group has come up with really just such beautiful insights. And I would love to, Bo el Paro, remember we said that maybe last week, God says, come to Paro, to Moshe, instead of go to Paro. Because God is saying, take my hand. Okay, I'm not comparing myself to God. That is not what I meant. Please don't anybody quote me as comparing myself to God. But I am comparing thank you for the smile, Moshe and Ted, but I am comparing, come with me on this journey. And I really would love your partnership in not just understanding the connection to the parasha, which could be simple. Like, we don't need to read the whole thing just to find, it might be very obvious, but finding where does this resonate for us? Because otherwise the Nevi'im, the words of the prophets, feel so far away from me and so not speaking to my soul. So I would love to hear if people make sense to people, if this speaks to you, because to me, it made me very excited to go forward. And before that, I was a little not so excited. And I've learned with this group for years, and it's always been awesome. So I know it's not the group. I figured it was me. Or maybe the topic, I don't know. Yes, Ted, please.
Well, I just to support what you say, as Rabbi Sachs points out, there are three important strands. There are the rulers, the priests, and the prophets.
Correct, he does do that.
Just speaking for myself, I have always found the prophets the ones that speak most clearly to me. So
wow,
I like
so
your
you
idea.
Better stay in this class then.
No, I really like your idea.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did see a few nods. I'm hoping it'll feel more relevant for everybody. And the way I can sort of gauge is that this is such a rich, thoughtful group. And I felt like I wasn't offering questions that people had so much to add. And that didn't feel good to me either. I can sit and talk about everything I read, but I feel like our richness of this class actually comes from the conversation and from what other people have to offer, and not just what I have to teach, which come from my thoughts and, just showing you the many books. I have 4 books in front of me. I actually put 1 book aside. I'm like, how many books can I read each time? So I mostly focus on these 4 books. Okay, so thank you for supporting me on that side. If anybody has something to say, I'm happy to hear it.
Yes, Rabbanit, is Judy. I applaud your effort. And to tell you the truth, I mean, we started this whole thing, dedicating the shiur to my sister, to who I daily do Tehillim with other people in different groups, and people are adopting worldwide for her on Tehillim. But to tell you the truth, sometimes even when I read the Tehillim of course I read in Hebrew, and then even in English, it like doesn't just like words to me. It doesn't really make sense. So your whole effort about trying to find meaning in it is, I just so appreciate it.
Oh, you just gave me goosebumps. That makes so much sense what you said. Exactly. I'm so glad. Okay. In any
I'll
case,
tell you
yeah.
one other point.
Yes.
Just now was flipping through some emails and I came across something which talked about Rav Soloveitchik handing over, after he passed, handed over the baton to a Rabbi Wurzberger. As a matter of fact, that Rabbi Wurzberger, his wife was a friend of my mother in Germany, but that's not the main point here. The main point is that I know that Rabbi Wurzberger wrote a book about the meaning of tefillah. I'm trying yet to find it, haven't yet been successful at finding it.
Okay, that's an idea for a class another year. Thank you, Judy. I love that idea, actually, learning about tefillah. That could be meaningful. And if we ever do that, it will be about finding meaning. Okay, so let's put that aside for now. I love that idea. Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, there's so much to learn this week. Come with me, please. Bo'iti tashma, come and learn. That's in Aramaic, if you didn't know. What is the story in the parasha? Really, this is such a rich, most people, I would assume, maybe venture to guess that everybody knows the story, but let me summarize it. And that is that we left off last week with the Jews, the Israelites leaving Egypt, and the Egyptian army, God hardened their hearts. I don't want to go into that. Why? That's not relevant to here right now, I think, but it could be, but that's not the focus. And what happens, Israelites think that they're free, but actually the Egyptians are behind them. And then there's a whole story where that would be for another topic, for where exactly is the angel, where's the cloud? But in any case, God confuses the Egyptians, doesn't allow them to see the Israelites at night. And there is a pillar of cloud, a pillar of fire. But then what happens is that the waters of the Yam Suf, which actually is beautiful, called the Red Sea. It just is, because the clay down there is red, but it actually means the Reed Sea. So somebody dropped an E once, and even though it doesn't sound good to our ears, it is the Sea of Reeds. Sea of Reeds sounds better than Reed Sea. Let's do Sea of Reeds. The Red Sea just sounds right, but it's wrong. Okay, the Sea of Reeds parts, some say it parted into 12 so that each Shevet, each tribe could go by themselves. There's also a teaching that the tribes are arguing on the edge of the Yam Suf and saying, what do we do? Do we go back? Do we this? Well, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. And Nachshon ben Aminadav takes the moment, pulls authority into his hands. I happen to love Nachshon. I just love that story. It's not in the Torah, by the way, it's a Medrash. Jumps in, doesn't jump, walks in. And just when he's about to not be able to breathe, the waters part. So that's a teaching for me about God expecting us to always be proactive, right? That God doesn't just necessarily hand gifts, but we have to do our not due diligence, but what is the word? Some word, somebody. Proactivity. Hishtadlut. Milton, were you going to say something?
His part in making it
His
happen.
part, but our part also. That's the thing, our part, yes. And hishtadlut means to try or to work on it. Thank you. It's a partnership.
We take the initiative.
Take the initiative. Beautiful, beautiful. And then what happens? They don't necessarily see what went on. It's interesting. There's a midrash that we'll learn also, hopefully inside, that the Jews, they didn't quite know what happened to the Egyptians. They were on the other side of the Sea of Reeds. But actually what happened was, imagine to yourself, I love this imagery. As the Israelites walk through, the waters are parted. By the way, there's a gorgeous, gorgeous midrash that in the walls of the water, there were fruit trees. So when one little child pulled at his ima's or Abba's coat and said, I'm hungry, they were able to pluck an apple or pluck an orange and just eat, which is just a gorgeous imagery that reminds me, I don't know, of the 12 dancing princesses. Anybody know that story? Got to read it. Yeah, there's a fairy tale, the 12 dancing princesses, where they go down and it reminds me of that. You can look that up afterwards. I don't need to be here telling you a fairy tale, even though I love it. Anyway, they're walking through, and imagine to yourself that as the Israelites walk through behind them, the water is closing on the Egyptians. And the Egyptians end up churning in this, sea of mud. Basically, they get stuck in it and they all die. Some of them die faster than others. It's another way of understanding it. And that the way that the Israelites, they finally said, like, what happened to them? So we're going to get to that midrash. It's a gorgeous midrash as well. But in any case, they end up being spit out, so to speak, on the other side. And so they saw them, that they died. And finally, they realized that they are free and they are safe, at least for the moment, not for very long, but for the moment. They believes in God and in Moses, God's servant. And then they sing Shirat Hayam. They sing the song of the sea. Rega. What is this? What is this called in Hebrew? What is this called? A tambourine or minstrel? Is that the right word? Not minstrel. Minstrel is the person. There's another word for this.
Timbrel.
Oh, timbrel. That's what it is. Timbrel. Oh, I love that word, timbrel. And there's a beautiful Debbie Friedman. Beautiful. Maybe if we have time at the end, we can play it. And Miriam took the timbrel in her hand. So I have one. It was given to me as a gift by a girl who I taught to Lane, and by her and her mother. I love it. So this in Hebrew is called Tof Miriam, Miriam's drum. That is what it's called in Hebrew, in modern day Hebrew. It's not called timbrel. It's not called tambourine. It's called Tof Miriam, which it is. I mean, it's a drum that's stretched over, but it is a timbrel. And Moshe leads the men, or the Am, the nation, but Miriam also leads. Love it. It's a real moment of women leadership. I can't imagine why that would speak to me, but it does. And then after that, there's a whole other part where they don't have water, they complain. They don't have food, they complain. They don't have water, again, they complain. Then Amalek comes and is defeated by God and by following Moshe's instructions. If anybody was listening Sunday night, I spoke about that, but it was human chamar. Okay, that's the Torah portion. Anybody have anything to add, or are we good with that?
I just want to mention, I know there's something at the Bayit this weekend, that Hayes has said that this Shabbos is Refugee Shabbat,
Yeah,
which is a good tie-up with the Exodus.
thank you. Because we were refugees, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
very nice. There's another tie-in, by the way. There's a special bracha, prayer, actually, it's tefillah, that we say now every parashat Beshalach. We print it out. And that is, there is a teaching, doesn't matter what the story is right now, that God said that it is harder to make matches between couples than it is to split the sea. So it is a blessing that we offer, that people should find their partner. And I want you to know that last year when I read it out loud, somebody came to me at the end of tefillah with tears in their eyes and said, thank you for seeing me. So not that that was me. I mean, I meant it for everybody, but what they meant was, thank you for noticing and recognizing that this is something that I wish in my life. So that's another thing about this Shabbat, Ted. Thank you. All right. And now we're, okay. Who knows what the Haftarah is for this week? Not a trick question. You're welcome to unmute and offer it. Milton.
Devorah against Yavan, the Greeks, and Sisera.
So it's not just the song. So, okay, different people have different customs. Some people read chapters 4 and 5. 4 is the story, 5 is the song. Thank you. So Deborah, song, actually, let's say this week, Deborah the prophetess. By the way, Deborah is a prophetess. Miriam, also it says Miriam Hanaviyah, Miriam is a prophetess. There you go, connection number 1, both women, both prophetesses. There's an army, there's a battle of some kind. It's a different battle because the battle in Judges, the Jews take part in it. Here, the Jews were not fighting Egyptians, God just made them die. But it's still, there was a battle where, and there's more connections. So there's a battle, there's a song that was sung. So in the Torah, it's Moshe and Miriam. In the Haftarah, it is only Deborah, the woman, but still very connected. And there's a poem, there's a battle, there's a woman, hero. Okay, so that's the setting. Are people at all familiar with the story of Deborah the prophetess? Anybody not? Please do not be embarrassed to raise your hand and tell me you're not familiar. I really want to know how much background to give. Okay, and if you're off camera, you have to tell me somehow. Okay. Give me
I'm
a
not
minute.
so familiar. I mean, I appreciate
Judy,
your.
okay, so let me give you the background. That's fine, thank you. The
Thank you.
back, sure, 100%. The background is that the Jews have actually moved. Remember, the Torah finishes just before Moshe comes into the land of Canaan. Joshua actually leads them, and they need to conquer the land. And then there's many ups and downs between Yoshua, the judges. Actually, the judges are right after Yoshua, and this is from the chapters. This is one of the beginning chapters of Judges, where the Jews don't do well in God's eyes, and therefore the enemies start to conquer them. They call out to God, and this goes, and God saves them, and this comes over and over, this up and down, up and down. We are now coming on a scene where the Jews, just 1 minute, I'm going to read to you a little bit what she wrote in this book to give you background. The story of Devorah and Barak, there's also a man here, takes place about 200 years after the conquest of Eretz Yisrael, because Joshua did lead the Israelites, the Jews actually, into conquering. The conquest itself was incomplete and left pockets of Canaanites. One of them was the house that were still conquering the Jew, or were not conquered. The house of Yavin recovered, rearmed, and reasserted its dominance. Sisra, by the way, there's a wonderful group of women in Gush Etzion who create musicals and plays, really beautiful, actually in support during the Intifada. And actually one of the main actors, her son was killed. Also, it was in support of people who were bereaved families, to bring some chizuk, to bring support, but she continued on. They wrote a musical called Devorah, and it was beautiful. And I remember Sisra, who's the general, not the king, but he was the general who they were under his thumb, military thumb. So they had this chant that they would go, Sisera, 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 ra, ra, Sisera, 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 ra, ra. And that's how they would, like, as if they were supporting. And then at the end, when he dies, because he does die at the end by the hands of a woman, they went like in a Sisera, 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 ra, ra, meaning we conquered him. He wielded superior weapons, an entire division of iron chariots, which serve the same purpose as tanks do now. That's what they use. They used to use iron chariots. Anybody remember how many Egyptian iron chariots there were?
600.
600. He has 900. We're going to see that inside. And there's a medrash that ties them to each other. The Jews have no central government, no standing army, no means of funding or producing comparable weapons. So Sisera was free to just go around. Now, they should have all gathered together and supported each other, but they were not, the Jews. They were split, and everybody was more looking out for themselves and their neighboring tribes. And now Dvorah comes on the scene. Is that helpful, Judy? That's background.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
Just give me a moment because I created a PDF. I just need to find it. Here it is. Okay. So as I said, the Israelites again did what? Bad. This is from Sfaria, the translation, not mine. To the Lord, and after Ehud had died, everybody with me? Can you see is it large enough? Okay, good. And so God sold them or surrendered them to who we spoke about, Yavin, the king of Canaan, and also the king in Chatzor. And the head of his army or his general was Sisera. And the Israelites cried out to the Lord, for he had 900. By the way, how much is 900 compared to 600? 1.5. We're going to see that in a medrash. And he had been oppressing Israel for 20 years. They finally cried out. Now here's the scene, Devorah. So here I want to tell you something. In Hebrew, it says like this. Udvorah and Deborah, Isha, a woman, Nevi'ah was a prophetess. And I want to ask this group, why does the Torah have to add the word Isha, that she is a woman, if it says prophetess? Isn't that redundant? She was a woman prophetess. You don't have to say woman. And yet the Torah, or the Tanakh, actually, the Torah is the first 5 books. 1 second, Helen, I see you. I'm going to call on you in 1 second. But everybody gets the question?
Yes.
Vivian, I see you're looking puzzled. Do you get the question? You got the question. Okay, you're puzzled because you don't have an answer yet. Ellen.
Doesn't mean that she was married.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's amazing. Mean that she was, oh, wow. That goes along beautiful. Oh, wow. Okay, that was like, whoa, earth shattering. I've taught this parrot so many times. I never thought of that. That's so interesting because there's a teaching. It says afterwards, Eshet Lapidot, the wife of Lapidot. Lapid is a torch. So the wife of Lapidot, or a woman from a place called Lapidot, but we don't actually know where Lapidot is, or a woman who took care of torches. So one of the explanations is that she used to make wicks, but she used to make wicks. She was a very rich woman, but she took the time to make wicks for the temple. So, but it also could mean that she's the wife of somebody who is a torch, and Barak, who is the other person who is who's named in this chapter, means lightning or a streak, a bolt of light. So that could be the reason. That's gorgeous, Helen. Thank you. That wasn't what I was going to bring it up. Now you see why we need conversation, guys. I need you to bring in things because you have so much more to add. So one answer, Isha, maybe because she's a married woman. Why we need to know that, I don't know, but that's a beautiful idea. Anybody
Another
else?
idea. Yes,
Dave.
another idea. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you for sure.
Okay, the other idea is, sorry to be harping on this thing with my sister, but like when people say she should have, or if I say she should have a complete refuah shalema, I know that's a redundancy. So comparing it to this, Devorah HaNeviah, Isha, that it's, of course it's a redundancy, but it's meaningful to have the redundancy.
Why is it meaningful in this case, Judy? I'm pushing you. And you don't
Okay,
have to
because-
answer, but why would it be meaningful to add a woman, a prophetess?
Because it's unusual that we have
Nice.
women, like you're
That's a
Rabbi
good
Yisrael.
answer. Thank
Usually-
you. That's a very nice answer as well. I agree. It's like highlighting, sorry, my Toph Miriam is making noise.
Her womanness.
Her woman, right? The fact that she's a woman is so unusual. Beautiful. I think that's
Right.
also a beautiful, beautiful answer. Anybody else? Yes, Vivian, unmute, please.
Yeah, I think that in those days, once a woman is married, then the husband is kind of in charge of everything and he takes over, and the properties and everything belong to him, not to her. So I think it's important that they mention she was a married woman, but she was beyond all this.
Beautiful. Ah, fantastic. Welcome, Lance. So you're taking what Helen is saying and taking it one step further. So I could put them all together. Oh, Judy's back with us. So you could say it's important to highlight that she's a woman. It's important to say perhaps that she's married, or it's just something to mention. And you're saying actually it's important to say that because look, even though she was married, and even though usually a woman is more subservient at that time, perhaps, or at least her assets would belong, actually she had a lot of presence in her own right. So she's even more unusual. Okay, you can see I love this Perek. Thank you. So all of that is awesome. I want to, Vivian, you went off camera for a minute, and that's okay if you wanted to. If nobody else has something to say, I would like to add another thought. Okay, to add another thought. Okay, so all of that, yes, and you're familiar with that? Yes, and, not yes, but. Yes, and perhaps it is telling us that she's a woman because at that moment in time, Am Yisrael actually needed a woman's touch. And I know that sounds stereotyping, but it's not important to me that it's stereotyping, because if a woman's touch is meaningful to people reading it, and actually she was successful, then it's okay in my mind. Now, that doesn't mean a man couldn't do the same thing. But in this case, they kind of needed a woman, maybe. They needed a woman. They actually needed a woman to pull people together in the same way a mother, and by the way, in the Shirah, in the poem that follows, she says, Em Israel, she is a mother in Israel. And we think of as a mother very often, please don't hold me and say, oh, but men, of course, fathers can do it too. But we do have the same way Vivian pointed out that usually the fathers, the husbands would take all the assets. That's the way it was. So often the woman is the one who's in the home and who gathers her children together and is hopefully able to make peace and create a family feeling. And maybe that is what Am Yisrael needed right then, because remember, they're all in their own areas and they're not coming to each other's rescue. So maybe they needed a woman's touch. Okay, we're 3 words in. I think we should continue. Okay, going back to the text. We probably won't get through everything I want to, but I really would like to point out some things. So Eshet Lapidot, we spoke about, the wife of, either it means she was a wife of a person named Lapidot. That's one of the explanations, as you see in the English. Another explanation is she made wicks, because Lapid means torch. And another one is that she's the wife of specifically Barak. Continuing. So we know she's a woman. We know she's a prophetess. Ki shofta et Israel. She judges Israel. So she's also a judge. There is no way to say judge in woman as far as I know. I don't think there is.
Shofetet.
Shofet. No. In Hebrew there is. I'm saying in English. I don't think. Like prophetess you could say, but there's no judges. Like that doesn't. I don't think it's word. Yeah. So Tomer is like the word Tamar. Tamar is a date. What is special about a date tree or a palm tree? By the way, coconuts are also palm trees, and I think there are others. Anybody know what's special about a date tree or palm tree? In its visual. It's very, I don't have a picture of it right now. I probably have somewhere, but I don't know.
Straight.
Tall and straight does not, you can't hide under it. Weeping willow. There are oak trees or maple or other trees that you could hide under the leaves. But if she's sitting under it, she's probably not getting shade, but she's also not hiding, which is for 2 reasons it's meaningful. One is that she can't do any shady dealings because everybody can see what she's doing. And another one, it's modest, it's sanua. She's not secluding herself with a man, which, I'm very aware of that. I would never sit in my office with a man, my husband, but I would never do that. I would always, for sure, make ourselves visible, that we're very aware of that. It would be inappropriate. So that's why it has to say Tomer Devorah. It didn't say, right? Otherwise, why add that piece of information? I'm just sharing that. Now, I know I've moved away from the connections to the Parsha, but I feel like this Haftarah is so beautiful and rich that I would love for you to learn it, because we know the connection to the Parsha. It's pretty straightforward, at least from what I've said. If somebody has another thought, please feel free to raise your hand and tell me that. And
I have a friend in Israel who named her daughter Tomer Devorah.
oh, beautiful. That is really beautiful. Most people say Tamar, which means state. That's really, really beautiful. And it says where she is geographically, and it says Vaya'alu elea b'nei Yisrael mishpat, which is that Bnei Yisrael went to her, which is a way of saying she didn't have to force them. They accepted her authority. Okay. And then she calls to Barak ben Avinoam from another place, Kedesh Naphtali. I could show you a map, but we'd spend a lot of time figuring it out. Just understand that this has to do with the military strategy. And she says, God has commanded you, go march up to Har Tavor, Mount Tavor. Mount Tavor, by the way, is beautiful, beautiful mountain that exists. You can see it in Israel today. It's very unique in the way it looks. It's broad. And actually, there's a winding road that goes all the way to the top. There's a monastery on top. I don't know why it's a monastery. I've never driven up the mountain, but there's certain in that part of Israel. If you ever go to Israel, I recommend you drive by it. It's kind of gorgeous to know that you're seeing the exact mountain where this took place. And he said, and God said, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun. Remember, they're trying to conquer Sisera. And then she gives him actually a strategy. She's doing, I don't know what it's called in a military strategy, where you draw people like the flank this way, and then Sisera will be drawn this way into the Wadi. Wadi is a dry riverbed. And then you'll be able to conquer them because you're coming from Har Tavor, the mountain. You'll be able to see them. You'll have the upper hand. And what does Barak say? Only if you go with me, I'll go. If not, I won't go. Whoa, that's surprising. Well, one of the sources that I read said that he felt that the Jews were not inspired and they didn't feel safe, but they really followed Dvorah. They really trusted Dvorah and trusted that God was with Dvorah. And Barak felt that they either may not follow him, or maybe he felt that actually, they wouldn't be successful. If Devorah, who was, she was representing God. I want to add, by the way, woman, prophetess, judge. We know she's a poetess, even though you don't say that in English so often, because we know she wrote the poem in the next chapter. And she's also a general now. She's also offering military strategy. Kind of cool. Please jump in if you have something to offer. And what does she say? She said, I'll go with you. However, there will be no glory for you in the course you are taking, because then Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. What is that in Hebrew? Ki v'yad isha yimkor Hashem et Sisera. So it's interesting. The word isha, woman, has come up 2 places, but in her poem, she actually speaks of Yael. If anybody was in Shul this Shabbat, Reb Stephen gave a beautiful, beautiful blessing to Yael Kress, who had a bat mitzvah. And Yael is an ibex. And it also has the word aliyah, la'alot, to go up. And if you think, everybody here know what an ibex is? It's a kind of deer, I guess. Gorgeous. They're in Israel. They're beautiful. Very.
Kinds of horns.
What?
Don't they have special kinds of horns?
I don't know, probably. Yep.
Pointed.
Very
pointed.
nimble. Yeah. Go on, Milton.
They have a sort of pointed horns, not like a ram, which is curls around.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't have, right. They're kind of straight, I think, actually. But anyway, they're very, very nimble, and they go up and up on the rocks. And Reb Stephen said that that's what it reminds him of, the word aliyah, la'alot, to go up, because Yael. So Yael came from a woman who was not actually Jewish, but she killed Sisera. Who knows the story of how Yael killed Sisera? Anybody here know the story? It's similar, but not the same as the story of Yehudit on Hanukkah. Anybody know the story? Not a trick question. It's just knowledge.
Something about giving him something to eat or drink and then capturing him when he
Not
was
capturing, but
intoxicated.
close. Yep.
When he was
Tell us the story.
intoxicated.
It's she puts a tent peg through his head.
But before that, she gives him milk. He's running away. Right. He's running away after the battle where his troops were defeated. And Yael was part of the Keni, and the Keni actually were aligned with Israel, but Sisera didn't know that. So he comes in, talk about propriety, and he says to Yael, will you hide me? And if anybody comes, will you tell them he went that way, even though he's in her tent? And she's like, sure, no problem. She takes him in, he says, I'm thirsty. She gives him milk. So this is the thing about having milk before bed. It supposedly makes you sleepy. I'm lactose intolerant. I don't drink milk, so I don't know if that's what happens, but maybe somebody else can weigh in on that. But there is a thing about that. And then when he falls asleep, she doesn't actually watch over him. She takes a tent peg and drives it into his temple and kills him because she's aligned with the Jews and she wants to capture him, which means, so here's another connection to the Parsha. Anybody here familiar with Bidei Nashim Tzidkaniot Nigalu Yisrael? I know I said it in Hebrew. I get it. I'll translate it. Yeah, so Judy is nodding. Vivian, you're nodding also? Anybody else nodding here? I know you have to know Hebrew. I'm not trying to trick you. In the Bishut, in the merit of righteous women, the Jews were saved from Egypt. So who are those righteous women? Come, it's your turn to talk. Who are the righteous women who, in their merit? Tell us one, Helen.
The midwives?
The midwives, that's two, but yes, I get it. Shifra and Pu'ah. So that could be Egyptian ones. I wrote about that one, that it could be Egyptian, and it could be Jewish, and it could be Miriam and Yocheved, but as midwives, Milton, yeah.
Yeah, that would be the daughter of Pharaoh. Who,
She saved Moshe, Bitya. Right. Yes, she saved Moshe, good. Anybody else have something to add to this? In the merit of the righteous women? So Miriam also, even if she wasn't a midwife, she watched over Moshe. She's the one who connected Bat Paro, the daughter of Pharaoh, with Yocheved to nurse him, to breastfeed him. And Yocheved's the one who put him in a little basket. So I think those are all the women. Are there any more women that I'm forgetting? Midwife.
Don't forget Sipporah.
Sipporah, nice, thank you, excellent. The wife of Moshe, who saved Moshe's life by circumcising their son.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Nice, beautiful. Lots of righteous women. And in the Haftarah, yes, Lance, somebody else?
How about Sisera's mother?
Well, Sisera's mother did not help to save the Jews from Egypt. She didn't even live at that time. So
But she
we're talking
pointed
about,
to
no,
the-
wait a second. We're still on the Torah portion. On the Torah portion, I agree with you. Let's get there. I don't think in the merit of Sisera's mother, the Jews were saved. That would be a lot. But I agree that she's mentioned. But let's go to the Torah. We have two midwives, Bat Paro, daughter Paro, Tzipora, maybe Yocheved and Miriam. Right, the two is Tzipora and Bat Paro. We have a lot of people, a lot of women. Now Lance is pointing out that there's not two, but three women who are mentioned. And I know I haven't looked inside. I can show it to you in a minute. So we know Devorah saves. Let's go back and hold that thought. I'm not forgetting about her, because even if it wasn't in her merit that the Jews were saved, Lance, we learned something from her. So what happens? Just 1 minute. So this is Chever the Kenite. That's the Kenim, the Kenim. That's Yael. So Yael is the one who is part of this group, this nation, and she's the one who killed Sisera. So this is where it tells us that he separated, pitched his tent near Kedesh, whatever. We can look that up, or you could look that up geographically. Sisera was informed that Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone to Mount Tabor. So he ordered all his, that's what happened, was the opposite. He ordered all his chariots, 900 iron chariots, and all the troops he had to move. And Deborah said to Barak, get up. This is the day where the Lord will deliver Sisera into your hands. Charged down Mount Tabor, followed by 10,000 men. And the Lord threw Sisera and all his chariots and army into a panic before the onslaught of Barak. Sisera leaped from his chariot and fled on foot as Barak pursued the chariots and all the soldiers as far as wherever that is. All of Sisera's soldiers fell by the sword. Not a man was left. By the way, that verse, not a man was left, just want to tell you, is also in our Parsha about the Egyptians. Another literary connection. Lo nish'ar ad echad. And in our Parsha, it says, next moment.
And it's also interesting that it says no lo nishar adam. It doesn't say lo nishar ish.
Oh, why? Oh, that's interesting. Okay. What do you understand from that?
Before we were, talking about the importance of the isha, and now
Oh, it should have said ish, maybe. That's interesting. Okay.
no, I know. No, adam is more. It's
Universal,
more
yeah.
inclusive. It
Well,
includes
Isha,
the
Adam,
Nashim and
well, Isha in this case might be women, Jewish women, and Adam is more universal, maybe. That's
Right.
a possibility. So here we go. In Hebrew, in the Torah text, it says Vayahom, that God caused panic or confusion. And in the Haftarah, it also says Vayahom. Here, let me just find it for you. Here it is in Tetvav and 15. Vayahom Hashem et Sisera, the Lord threw Sisera and all his chariots and army into a panic. That word is used also by the Egyptians. Also by the Egyptians, it says, Vayahom et Machane Mitzrayim, that God caused panic in Egypt's camp. And Lo nish'ar ad echad, doesn't even one was not left. Actually, only one was left after the battle with Sisera, and that was Sisera himself. And in our Torah portion, it says, Lo nish'ar behem ad echad, that nobody was left. Actually, Paro was left. Okay. And here's the story. He fled on foot to Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. So we know already they were defeated. For he thought there was friendship between Chatzor and Kenite. But actually what happened, she calls him in. Don't be afraid. She's actually luring him in. He entered her tent. She covered him with a blanket. He asked for water. She gives him milk, covered him. And he said, stand at the entrance of the tent. Anybody comes and asks you if there's anybody, say no. And then when he fell asleep, she took a tent pin and drove the pin through his temple till he went out, and then he died. And then when Barak came in pursuit of Sisera, says, hey, let me show you where he is. And there is Sisera lying dead with the pin in his temple. On that day, God subdued King Yabin of Canaan. So here we already have two women who actually conquered. Dvorah, by getting the word of God, pulling the Jews together, telling Barak what to do, and commanding the army, and really defeated. And Yael. So if we had 7 women, or maybe 7 women in the Torah, we now have 2 women here as well. And then we haven't gotten to the mother of Sisera yet, Lance. We'll get to her in a minute. But she's not part of conquering. All right, thoughts. I want to take a break of talking. I would like people to tell me any thoughts that come up for them, the connection for us today.
For us today, one thought. For us today, can't help but noticing some Israeli names there of our leaders, Barak, Lapid.
Lapid isn't used that much, but it's the name of a yishuv. Lapid is right near Hashmonaim, across the street from Modi'in. And that's the reason it was called Lapid. No, I don't know why it was called Lapid, actually. It was called Lapid, not because of Lapidot. It's the wrong area. It's a torch because it had something to do with the Hashmonaim. Sorry, that was my mistake. Yes, so Lapid isn't so much. It could be a family name, though. Yes, very nice. Yael, Barak, Deborah, beautiful. Yeah, all those names. Very nice. Milton, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was always wondering what was in it for Yael. I mean, was there some bad blood between?
It seems that the Keni actually aligned themselves with Israel. I don't have an answer to that.
Why kill? Why she just the Israel, when the soldiers came, he's in there, he's in the tent. Did she have to kill him?
Well, okay, so let's just think. So that's interesting, but I think at the time, at least, you kill your enemy. That's what they did. They all killed the enemy. And maybe she thought he might wake up before Barak got there. She didn't remember. Barak only came after he was dead. It wasn't like Barak was waiting outside the tent. So that just could have been timing. Maybe she didn't know how long he would sleep. I mean, I'm just offering an answer. I don't have an answer to that.
I mean, there seems to be an underlying story here, which isn't obvious or told.
I think the underlying story is that the Chever HaKeni, that they aligned themselves with Israel. And Yael, I mean, she lured him into the tent, lured him into the tent. So I think the issue of killing is just, that's what they did then. I mean, that's what I can understand. 1 second, Moshe has his hand raised as well. And that's the same story of Yehudit, who was inspired by Yael. She also fed dairy products to the Holofernes, and she killed him. Because when you kill the leader, that demoralizes the rest of the nation. I think that's why. But hold that thought, and Moshe wants to answer.
Just that Yitro was Hakeni. He was a Midianite, but he was.
So it makes sense that they would align themselves. Very good. Good reading. Yep. Close reading. Does that make sense to you, Milton?
It actually says it in the Haftarah. That
it does say it. And Moshe's father-in-law is Yitro, right? So it's from that nation. So you could imagine they would align themselves. But I'm not hearing that you're questioning that they aligned themselves. You're surprised that Yael killed Sisera.
Exactly.
I mean, what were her other options?
Well, he was asleep in the tent. She could have called over some big husky cousin of hers to do the deed.
Well, why wouldn't she? Well, so that now I'm confused, because why shouldn't she do it? Because she's a woman? Why wouldn't she do it? Why does she have to call a husky? I'm asking, I'm curious. Why not do it herself? That seems to be a man-woman thing. So she felt capable.
They may have captured him.
You mean left him alive? So that's your question, kill him. So I think that has to do with demoralizing the nation. I think. I mean, I don't have a better answer. If somebody else has one, I'm happy to hear.
It was also good strategy, just like you hear now with terrorists. The interesting word is like they neutralized the terrorists. So she had to take action right then.
Nice. Yes, Lance, did you want to add something?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I would, but I don't want to hurt you, because I want to go into the Talmud and compare a woman in the Talmud with Sisera's mother.
Okay. So we haven't gone to, we only have 8 minutes left, so I'm not sure we'll have time for that. But
I would like to say this, that you're thinking of Yael as a human being. In my view, Yael is a manifestation of God, an avatar of God, and Yael kills the bad guy. And you got to figure out why Yael kills the bad guy. But you look at Sisera's, the passage, if you could look at that, and you'll see what Sisera does. I mean, he's a disgusting human being, isn't he?
Right. Yeah.
And so God kills
Well, I
him.
mean, disgusting. He's a general of an army that wants to conquer.
Isn't-
Like,
isn't
I
he a
don't know if
rapist?
he's a disgusting human being.
Isn't
I
he a
can't
rapist?
answer that.
Isn't he a
What?
rapist? Doesn't he rape?
I didn't see that. He might have. If he did, then I would call him disgusting.
Would
I
you look
didn't.
at that passage, please?
Which passage?
There's only a paragraph, Sisera's mother.
Oh, you're about Sister's mother. We haven't gotten to that yet. Okay, one
No,
second.
yeah, that's my problem.
Well, that's in the next chapter. We haven't quite gotten to it. We may not get to it.
Are you going to go there next week?
I kind of thought next week I would go to
Yitro.
Yitro
Yitro's the
and
same thing. Yitro.
no, but
is-
I don't know what the Haftarah for Yitro is. No, I was going to do the Haftarah for Yitro is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can go. Yeah. So on that day, Deborah and Barak, the son of Avinom, sang, and they sing about the glory of winning the war and about how God helped. So this, by the way, is a beautiful song that I learned at Pirchei. Anybody know the song except for me? Shemo Melachim. Anybody know that? Shemo Melachim. Okay, I know the whole song, but you don't want to hear me. It'll take me a long time to sing it. It tells all about, it's a beautiful pictorial way of describing what happened that day. And then she goes on, you can read it if you want. You can also look up by yourself. That's the 5th chapter of Judges. And in our shul, we only read chapter 5, even though I love chapter 4, but there's nothing I can do about that. That's what we do. My heart is with Israel's leaders, with the dedicated of the people, bless the Lord. And then she keeps saying, she praises the tribes who came to the defense of the tribe of Israel that was being held captive by Sisera. And she actually derides the tribes that did not come. But you want to find Rise, O Barak, there was a remnant. Maybe I'm just looking to see what from Ephraim came, and Binyamin came, Zebulun came, Issachar came, but Reuven did not come. Dan did not come. Asher did not come. Okay, now you want to find Sisera. 1 minute. This is beautiful, the torrent of Kishon. So Kishon is a river, and God made, according to this, a flash flood actually in the Kishon River, which can happen at whatever time of year it was. It can happen rarely, but it can happen. And remember how the chariots were stuck in the mud in the Nile, in the Sea of Reeds. So too were the chariots stuck. And there's one more midrash I wanted to tell you, but let's just get to Sisera's mother. Most blessed of women be Yael. Okay, that we know. Her left hand reached her. She struck Sisera. Continuing. Okay. Through the window peered Sisera's mother. Behind the lattice, she cried, "Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why so late the clatter of his wheels?" The wisest of her ladies give answer. She too replies to herself, "Oh, she's comforting herself. Maybe they're just dividing the spoils because they won. Oh, a damsel or two for each man." That's what you were talking about.
That's rape.
Yeah, probably.
Or is a rapist.
Yeah.
And God kills him.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Great. Thank you. I
But
appreciate
there's a
that.
Talmudic story that's basically
Okay,
the
but
same.
we don't have time to go into that. You can send it if you want. What I do want to say, though, is a beautiful midrash here. I just need to find it just a minute. Okay. There's a midrash at the sea, at the edge of the Sea of Reeds from this week's parasha. When the Jews crossed the Reed Sea, some were faint of heart and did not have confidence that God would save them. And even afterwards, they thought the Egyptians might still pursue them. They said the same way we came out the other side, maybe the Egyptians are coming out a different side of the Sea of Reeds. And even though the Egyptians had been drowned, they couldn't see it with their own eyes. So God commanded the angel of the sea, whoever that is, to spit the bodies of Egyptians out onto shore. But the angel of the sea was reluctant to obey this command. And he said, "How can a master give his servant a gift and then take it away from me? Meaning you gave me the gift of the Egyptians being killed. I don't want to return them." So God says, "I'll give you 1.5 times back." And remember, we said there were 600 chariots that the Egyptians had, and 900 chariots that Sisera had. That's the 1.5 times that were drowned. And he said, "Wait, how do I know for sure that's going to happen, God?" And God said, "The Nahal Kishon, the brook or the river of Kishon, will be your guarantor. And that is the connection. That's another connection between these two. 600 chariots were drowned in the mud or stuck in the mud in Yam Suf, and 900 were stuck there. But we could continue a few more minutes. I'm pausing to hear any thoughts about these rich stories and visual scenes that we're hearing, Milton.
Yes, with regard to the mother, Sisera's mother.
Yes, let's talk about her. She's the next one on my list.
In the Talmud, Talmud is searching for what is the sound of the shofar. And they relate that.
Bev. Yes, it's a sobbing. Yes, and I'm sure Lance has something to say about that too. Yep, very nice. Lance, did you want to add to that?
I have a question for you based
What's
on
the question?
the Haftarah exclusively. My question is, which comes first, poetry or prose?
I don't know what that means, that question. I'm sorry. In the timeline, do you mean?
No. There's a book I have on a shelf, which is by Barry, one of the, I think, JTS people. But the argument is that poetry comes first. And the reason poetry comes first is that poetry is easier to memorize.
Okay.
And if you think about it, you think that, I think also the same thing is true of the Song of Moses. There's a prose part and a poetry part. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean by prose and poetry. I'm sorry. Do you mean
Okay.
the story?
The first half of the Haftarah is
a story.
Is a story. The second half of the Haftarah is you said
the poem,
Deborah's
right.
a poet, right?
It's because it's recounting the glory of the battle.
No, but they're poetic techniques and everything. We can't look into that right now, but I guarantee you that there's rhetoric and poetry, similes, metaphors, all that stuff. Okay. But the idea, that's why in the Middle Ages, there was alliterative literature. Alliterative literature is easier to understand. Poetry is easier to understand. And
right.
It comes first. And my honest feeling is that the second half of this Haftarah is far superior to the first. And I must tell you that this is my bar mitzvah Haftarah. I've said it many, many times. And once upon a time, I was in a synagogue. I was asked to say it, and they would not let me say the poetry part.
That's so interesting because in our show, as I said, we only do the poetry part. We do only chapter 5.
Really?
Only chapter 5. That's what I said. Maybe you missed it. I just said that. Only chapter 5 and not chapter 4.
Right. Why not chapter 4? Why not put them together? That's the way
I think the reason is that it's too long. Unfortunately. No, it's a very long Haftarah. It's beautiful, but it takes 15 minutes to learn it. It takes a very long time, or 10. It takes a very long time to learn it. So that's why I think
you don't have time for one of the most important.
Lance, I don't want to get into an argument about whether HIR should read both chapters. It was a decision made. There were different Hagim. That's not so relevant to this class, whether we should or we can do that offline. And you'd have to take it up with Hillel, who's our gabbai. I don't actually decide on that. I've told him many times, but I love chapter 4. And he's like, I know.
Every right in the world.
We're not doing it.
Mine is every right in the world to do it your way. I'm not questioning.
I'm just saying I can't argue this because I agree with you. So it's nothing for me to argue. And if I had a show, I think we would say both. That's just my thing. And that's okay. Okay. Now, but I do want to say here, I want to leave you with this thought. First of all, does anybody else have something they want to add, or Ted, something? I just feel it's so rich. I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Well, this is partly to clarify what Lance was saying. There are 2 versions of the story here. There's chapter 4 and chapter 5. Chapter 4 is prose. Chapter 5 is poetic. You can see it by the way it's laid out.
Correct. Same thing with the Torah, right? We first see the story and then we hear the poem.
And biblical scholars, the so-called, the modern critics, say that the poetic part precedes the prose part, that it's one of the oldest parts of Tanakh, is just linguistically.
Wait, I'm trying to understand, but why would you? Oh, you're saying, one second. This is confusing to me because I thought the poem celebrates the story.
It does.
You got 2 professors of English here, and you're outflanked.
But I didn't say it. I'm not arguing with you.
No. It's just there were different versions of these stories that were put together at a later date. and the poetic part, the Song of Deborah, was there, and then the story was written to explain why Deborah is singing this story.
Oh, you mean when it was written, mamash
Yes.
written the time. Okay, got it. So
Yes.
I just as an Orthodox person, not for any other reason, and I'm not going to argue this because you're professors of literature, I get that. Somebody, by the way, a conservative rabbi who I learned with, showed me yesterday that a conservative rabbi takes apart the whole story in the Torah and makes it into two different stories. And I'm like, I get it, but I can't accept it because I believe the Torah is God-given.
Well,
So
one time I was, many years ago, I was at a class at HIR with Rav Uri. I don't know, you didn't know him.
Popolovsky?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he was
him.
wonderful, just
Yes,
wonderful.
he still is wonderful.
And and we got into a conversation about this, and he just stopped the class and said, you have to keep in mind that there's the religious way of looking at it, and then there's the modern critical way.
Correct.
Well,
And
I'm just offering,
100%. So yes,
I'm just offering, along with Lance, the
correct.
modern
So there's
critical way of looking.
100%. There's the scholarly way of looking at it, or Bible critic, or whatever,
Right.
and modern. And then there's the Bible. 100%. I totally agree. And that's what I was trying to say. He said it better. So thank you. And Lance, so it's not up for argument because it's a different point of view. And that's
Wait a minute. If God is the author of all,
yeah.
then both Ted and you and I are correct.
Okay, I'm willing to accept that. But now I want to add something else. Thank you. Now, beautiful, actually. Now I want to add something else. Here's something that I love. Sisra's mother, would you say in the eyes of our sages, she's like a positive character, a negative, a friend, a foe? I want to hear what you think.
It depends on where you're standing.
Say more.
That is, you can see this as Deborah triumphing over Sisera's mother. Look, his mother is going to be bereft because of what he did. Or from another perspective, you can say that Deborah is sympathetic. This is a mother who's lost her son.
Isn't that the same? I thought those were
No.
both sympathetic. So maybe I misunderstood that.
One is sympathetic to the mother and one is sympathetic to the victors.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It's the character is ambiguous.
So it says like this, at the window, she peered. So first of all, it's so interesting that Dvorah, who called herself an Em B'Israel, a mother in Israel, is relating, no matter what, she is definitely relating to the sadness and worry of another mother, even though that is the mother of an enemy of Israel. And first of all, I think that's beautiful because I kind of love what you just said, Ted, that I didn't think of it that way. It's as if Dvorah is saying, look at how much anguish and pain is being caused in the world because of fighting. Sisera is not just a general who is conquering Israel. Sisera is also somebody's son. And his mother is only going to be bereft now, is only going to have pain because this happened. Now, Sisera's mother is also part of the tribe that wants to conquer Israel, so that's maybe complicated, but that's not the picture that Dvorah is, that's not the picture that Dvorah is painting. Dvorah is painting it's like a painting of her sitting at the window. You don't even know who it is, theoretically, Sisera's mother, and she's crying and sobbing and worried. And our sages appreciated that Dvorah did that and said, this is a universal pain. And thank you, Milton, for bringing it in. Who here knew that the cries of the shofar are based on this word, Vatiyabev em Sisera. She was sobbing. And our sages said, wait a minute, the shofar on Rosh Hashanah should be sobbing. What does that sound like? Is it, or is it, they're both sobbing. So therefore the truah is ashvarim and a tru'ah and a shvarim tru'ah. We need to blow all of those. But it's based on the mother of an enemy. And that is a window and a way into universality, which goes to what Judy said about Adam, universality. It seems like within this whole story, there's also a caring about humanity and a sadness that no matter what, whenever there's fighting and battle, thank you, Lance, for nodding. I'm so glad when we're on the same
I
side.
agree with you more, Rabbi Baruch. It's beautiful.
We so
Lovely.
disagree. I love the arguments and I also love the agreements. Got to have it sometimes. Thank you.
One other point.
Yes, Judy.
The word Devorah, doesn't it mean bee?
Yeah, and she stings
So-
like me.
So
Floats
yes,
like
the
a flies.
pain that she caused, we have to, as much as she's a prophetess and great
Wow.
with people and so forth, yet she was the stinger. She gave the sting and
That's
the
interesting.
the
Thank
pain.
you. Okay, that feels like a harsh way to end. Let's not
Sorry.
end. it.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I do want to end actually. First of all, thank you for going a little longer. I hope that this class was interesting for you. I'm still ready to hear if anybody wants to think of any of these pieces to say something in my life, your life meaning. If there's something that connects for you, I would so love to hear. You have an opportunity to say, Felice, we haven't heard you today. You usually have something. Having a daughter who's a rabbah, let's just remember.
Yeah,
I'd be so happy. Vivian, yes.
yeah. I was just thinking how many tefillot we say and how much is all for shalom. And we greet people with shalom. We say goodbye with shalom. That for the Jewish people, peace is the most wonderful thing. That's what will
That's
save
what we
us.
really want.
When there's
Yeah.
fighting, when there's it's all negative, but shalom is what we're craving for at all times.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful.
Okay.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Yes, amen. So I will conclude with the song that I love that I learned in Israel. So Seh Shalom B'Mro. It's like the pasuk that we know, Seh Shalom B'Mromav, one who makes peace up in the heavens, in the high parts where you can't even imagine they need peace. Yaseh Shalom, how much more we need peace. Val Kol Yisrael, on all of Israel. Val Kol Yoshvei Tevel, and on everybody. V'Imru Amen. Seh Shalom B'Mromav. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל. Is that what it is? יושבי תבל?
Yes.
ואמרו, what is it?
Yimru Amen.
No, I'm about to say that. ואמרו, אמרו אמן, עושה שלום במרומיו. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו amen. I hope you will continue. Thank you. Continue to join me every week as we speak not only about the content of the Haftarah, its connection to the Parsha, but also about where it might resonate in our lives. And I really invite you to come with me on that. We did that also partly today. It was rich enough that we didn't necessarily need it as much, but I still think it's so relevant that we should think about where does it intersect our lives today, or what message. And I really, really want people to take that with them as we learn going forward. I will take that with me as well. And I'm excited to learn from a slightly different lens, starting this week and continuing next week. Wait, what is next week? Is it February 8th? I'm sorry, I'm not having a class. Wait, is that a Wednesday? Yeah, I'm sorry, I won't have the class next week. Wait, this I can stop recording.